clicked on this video for a reason. And deep down, you already know that. Maybe you've been trying to ignore it. Maybe you've been brushing it off as stress, overthinking, or just one of those days. But something has been happening in your awareness lately. Something subtle, something you can't quite explain, yet impossible to dismiss. Pause for a second. Feel into that. You've been remembering things you never learned, not facts you picked up accidentally, not half-heard ideas that floated by you years ago. I'm talking about full, coherent knowing, appearing in your mind as if it has always belonged to you. You might be reading something, hearing a concept, or listening to a conversation, and instead of discovering it, you're recognizing it like, wait, why does this feel familiar? Why do I understand this so clearly? Why do I know where this is going and before anyone explains it? And the weird part, you're not confused, you're not overwhelmed. It feels strangely natural, like your consciousness has simply opened a door. And behind that door was a room you never realized you'd visited before. Maybe this has been happening in small flashes. Moments where a truth hits you so cleanly, so instantly that it bypasses thought completely. Moments where you just know and you can't explain how. Moments where your intuition doesn't feel like intuition at all, but like memory. Not memory from this life. Not memory from anything you've studied, lived through, or experienced. Something older. Something deeper. Something that feels like it's been waiting for the right moment to surface. You know that feeling I'm talking about, that soft tug in your awareness, that faint hum behind your thoughts, that quiet whisper that says, "You've seen this before. You've known this before. Pay attention." Most people ignore this. They brush past it, tell themselves they're overthinking, or chalk it up to imagination. But you didn't ignore it. That's why you're here. You've probably noticed other small shifts too. Your perception changing, your sensitivity increasing, your mind catching patterns before your logic has time to catch up, your dreams feeling less like dreams, and more like private messages from somewhere you can't name. Even your relationships might feel different. Conversations that once engaged you now feel shallow. Ideas that used to excite you no longer land, and topics you never cared about suddenly pull you in with a sense of urgency, like you're remembering a language you've always spoken but forgot you knew. And let's be honest, part of you has wondered if you're losing it, if you're imagining everything, if you're just tired, overwhelmed, or going through a phase. But no. You're not losing your grip on reality. You're expanding it. You're noticing things most people overlook because your awareness is starting to stretch beyond the boundaries you were taught to believe in. You're starting to perceive information that doesn't come from the past you remember, but from somewhere deeper inside you. And I want you to hear this clearly. You're not making it up. You're not confused. You're not unstable. You're not broken. You're waking up. You're touching a layer of consciousness that isn't accessed through studying or learning or repeating information. It's accessed through remembering, through resonance, through the quiet knowing that rises from somewhere beyond your brain. From a place inside you that feels ancient, familiar, and entirely your own. This is the moment most people turn away because they don't know what's happening to them. They suppress it. They fear it. They try to force themselves back into the old version of reality. But you didn't turn away. You leaned in. And that single choice, conscious or not, shifted your timeline. You're feeling the first ripples of something bigger, something that's been waiting patiently at the edge of your awareness, something that doesn't knock loudly, because it doesn't need to. It only waits for you to notice. And now, you have. So take a breath. Let your shoulders drop. Let your nervous system settle. And let yourself sink into that quiet truth inside you. Your mind isn't glitching. Your memory isn't malfunctioning. Your consciousness is opening a door. And what waits on the other side of that door is the real reason you found this video. Before we go any further, you need to understand something that most people will never hear in their lifetime. What's happening inside you right now? Those flashes of knowing, those moments of recognition, those sudden insights that feel like déjà vu but sharper. They're not coming from your brain. At least, not the way you were taught to think about the brain. Let's take a breath here, and let's be honest with each other. The old explanation, the one you learned in school, was simple. Memory lives in your neurons. End of story. Experiences form pathways. Repetition strengthens them. Recall reactivates them. That model explains a lot of things. But it does not explain you right now. It does not explain why you know things you never studied. It does not explain why you understand ideas you've never been exposed to. It does not explain why you're remembering what you never lived. So here's the truth you've been circling around without realizing it. Your consciousness has access to more than your brain's personal storage, much more. Because memory, real memory, isn't just biological. It's quantum. Let me explain it in a way that actually makes sense. Imagine reality has two layers. Layer 1, the surface layer, the physical world, your body, your senses, your brain's neural storage. Everything you were told is real. Layer 2, a deeper layer, an information field that exists beneath physical space. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. A real, measurable field where information doesn't disappear. Ever. Every insight, every discovery, every realization, every lived experience of any conscious being leaves an imprint in that field. It's like the universe keeps a permanent backup of every piece of understanding that has ever existed. Some cultures called this the Akashic Records. Mystics called it the field. Indigenous traditions called it the memory of the earth. Science, reluctantly and quietly, calls it quantum information. Different names, same reality. And here's the part that changes everything. Your consciousness was never limited to what your physical brain can store. It was always capable of touching this larger field. Most people never reach that point. Their awareness stays locked in the surface layer. Their ego reinforces the boundaries. Their conditioning keeps their perception narrow. But you're starting to slip through the cracks. You're noticing the bleed through. You're accessing information from somewhere your brain shouldn't have access to, but your consciousness does. And that's why your old understanding of memory no longer fits your experience. Think about this for a moment. If memory truly lived only inside your neurons, why would knowledge ever appear fully formed? Why would you wake up knowing something you never studied? Why would you comprehend things instantly, bypassing the learning curve entirely? The answer is simple, it wouldn't. Biological memory is slow, linear, built through repetition, practice, and time. But what you're experiencing now isn't slow, linear, or learned. It's sudden, complete, precise. That's not brain memory, that's field memory, and you're starting to access it. Let me give you a picture of what's actually happening inside you. Your brain is not the source of consciousness. It's the receiver, a tuner, a translator, a biological instrument designed to interpret a much larger signal. For most people, that signal is faint, blocked by noise, distraction, emotional turbulence, and ego identity. But your internal filtering system has begun to thin. Your mind is quieter, your awareness deeper, your perception sharper, your identity less rigid. Which means the signal, the memory stored in the quantum field, is finally reaching you with enough clarity that you can recognize it. And it feels like remembering, because it is remembering, not from this lifetime, not from your personal past, but from the collective memory bank of consciousness itself. Here's the part that surprises people the most. Quantum memory doesn't arrive gradually. It arrives all at once. It doesn't build like traditional knowledge. It drops in, fully formed, as if someone handed you the completed puzzle instead of the pieces. That's why it feels both strange and familiar. Like you're discovering something and remembering something at the same time. It's not imagination. It's not fantasy. It's not wishful thinking. It's recognition. Your consciousness is recognizing information that already exists at a deeper layer of reality. And your brain is simply receiving it. That's what quantum memory is. That's what you've been touching without knowing how to name it. And if you've been feeling confused, overwhelmed, or slightly disoriented by these experiences, it's because nobody ever taught you that this was possible. Nobody told you that memory isn't local. Nobody told you that consciousness isn't isolated. Nobody told you that you were wired to access more than your own past. But now you know. And once you understand this, everything that's been happening to you starts to make sense. Because here's the real secret. Quantum memory doesn't unlock randomly. It unlocks when consciousness reaches a developmental threshold. A point where the brain can no longer pretend it's the source of what you know. You're at that threshold now. And what you've been experiencing, the sudden insights, the inexplicable clarity, the strange familiarity, the knowledge without learning, is your consciousness brushing against a deeper level of reality. In the next part, you're going to understand exactly how to recognize the signs that this awakening is happening. But for now, just breathe. You're not malfunctioning. You're not overstimulated. You're not imagining things. You're accessing the field. And that changes everything, now that you understand what quantum memory actually is. Let's talk about how it shows up. Because here's the truth. You're already experiencing the signs, you just didn't have a name for them. Until now. And once you know what to look for, your entire life starts to make sense in a way that feels almost eerie, but also undeniably right. So let's walk through the 7 clearest signs your quantum memory is unlocking. Not vague spiritual cliches, not fluffy metaphors. Actual recognizable shifts happening in your awareness. Take your time with each one. Feel which of these are already happening inside you. Sign 1. You know. Things you never learned. This is usually the first sign people notice. A thought appears. A concept clicks. An answer rises in your mind before the question is even finished. You're not guessing. You're not inferring. You're not making an educated assumption, you know. And when someone asks how you know, you can't explain it. Because it didn't come from study, memory, or experience. It came from somewhere deeper, from the field, This kind of knowing has a very distinct feeling, clean, immediate, and strangely obvious, as if you're remembering something you forgot you remembered, and that's exactly what you're doing. Sign 2. Sudden ability in areas you've never trained. Have you noticed moments where a skill just appears? You understand how something works before anyone teaches you. You can follow a technique you've never practiced. You speak about a topic you've never studied with surprising clarity. You're not becoming an overnight expert. What's happening is more subtle. Your consciousness is pulling information that someone, somewhere, sometime already mastered. You're not copying them. You're accessing the same field where their understanding lives. Quantum memory isn't about becoming supernatural. It's about tapping into a collective archive that has always been there, and you're starting to tune into it. Sign 3. Recognition instead of discovery. This sign is incredibly common among people going through major consciousness shifts. You encounter something new, a teaching, a philosophy, a symbol, a scientific idea. And instead of thinking, wow, that's interesting, you feel something more like, I've seen this before. I already know this. I don't remember learning it, but I know it's true. This is quantum memory's calling card. The field doesn't present new information as new. It presents it as recognition, like a déjà vu of the soul. It's not the concept that feels familiar, it's the truth inside the concept, and that's why it hits so deeply. Sign 4. Dreams that come with real information. Not symbolic dreams, not chaotic images, not subconscious processing. I'm talking about dreams that feel like instruction, dreams where you're being shown how something works. Dreams where you understand languages, formulas, or ideas you've never encountered while awake. Dreams that leave you with knowledge you didn't have the night before. In dream states, the analytic filters of the brain loosen. The ego softens. The boundary between you and the field thins. Quantum memory flows in easily. And when you wake up, part of that information remains. People often say, I don't know why, but this dream felt real. It felt real because it was. Your brain didn't invent the information, it received it. Sign 5. Words, ideas, or explanations flow out of you. This one surprises people the most. You're talking, or writing, or teaching someone something, and suddenly the words just start coming. Clear, coherent, insightful, deeper than what you consciously understand. You hear yourself saying something and you think, where did that come from? The answer? The field. When this happens, you're in a temporary state of alignment, a flow state where your consciousness becomes a channel for information your brain didn't store but can translate. You're not performing, you're remembering. This is one of the strongest signs that quantum memory is active. Sign 6. Memories that feel like they're from another life. These aren't fantasies, and they're not wishful thinking. These moments feel like actual memories, snapshots, scenes, sensation. But they don't belong to your personal timeline. They may come with specific details, places you've never visited, names you've never heard, historical periods you've never studied. Most people assume these are past life memories. And maybe some are. But many are something else entirely. Pieces of the collective memory field your consciousness has accessed. Not your past, but someone's past, humanity's past, consciousness's past. The reason they feel so real is because they are real, just not in the way you were taught to understand memory. Sign 7. Instant understanding of complex ideas. This is a hallmark sign of quantum memory activation. You encounter a complicated idea, philosophical, scientific, metaphysical, and instead of struggling to grasp it, you simply get it. Not intellectually, not step by step. You understand the essence instantly, as if the idea is something your consciousness already holds, and your brain is just catching up. This kind of immediate comprehension is not normal for brain-based learning. It is normal when accessing field-based memory. And every time this happens, your system recognizes the frequency of truth more and more clearly. Now pause. How many of these signs are you experiencing? 1, 3, all of them? You don't have to force an answer. Your body already knows. These signs aren't coincidences, they're indicators, clear, reliable indicators, that your consciousness has begun tuning itself to the frequency of the quantum field. Not someday, not in a hypothetical future, but now. And if these signs are happening to you, there's a reason. Quantum memory doesn't activate randomly. It doesn't happen to special people. It awakens when consciousness reaches a threshold, a point in development where the field becomes accessible. In the next part, you'll understand why this threshold is happening for you now, and why it could never have happened earlier. Because awakening doesn't happen on accident. It happens on schedule, and your schedule just arrived. By now, you've probably felt a strange mix of relief and curiosity. Relief because everything you've been experiencing finally has a name. Curiosity because one question keeps rising in the back of your mind. Why now? Why is this happening to me at this specific moment in my life? Let's slow down, because this part matters. Quantum memory doesn't unlock randomly. It doesn't slip into your awareness by accident. It doesn't just happen because you watched the right video or read the right book. It awakens when your consciousness reaches a developmental point where the old way of perceiving reality can no longer contain you. And whether you realized it or not, you've reached that point. Let me show you what actually triggered this shift. Trigger 1. Your ego softened enough to let something else in. For most of your life, your mind operated inside a tight identity structure. This is who I am. This is what I know. This is how the world works. This is what's real and everything else isn't. That structure kept you safe, but it also kept you small. And somewhere recently, slowly or suddenly, something cracked. A belief dissolved, a certainty loosened. A piece of you realized maybe I'm not who I thought I was. That tiny moment of openness, that micro fracture in the ego created enough space for quantum memory to seep through. It always starts this way. When identity softens, perception expands. Trigger 2. Your frequency finally matched the field. The quantum field isn't out there. It's not a place you go. It's a frequency you tune to. For years, maybe decades, your inner frequency wasn't aligned with it. Not because you were doing anything wrong, but because your nervous system wasn't ready. Then something shifted. Maybe you started healing old wounds. Maybe you began questioning old patterns. Maybe you simply became more honest with yourself. Or maybe you hit a point where you couldn't pretend anymore. Either way, your frequency rose, quietly, steadily, naturally, until finally, you matched the resonance of the memory field, and the moment your frequency matched it, access opened. Just like a radio dial finally landing on a clear signal. Trigger 3. A disruption or breakthrough shook your inner world. For many people, the doorway opens during a moment of impact. A loss, a breakup, a health scare, a major transition, a spiritual breakthrough. A shock to the system that rearranged everything you thought was stable. When structures collapse, consciousness recalibrates. Filters weaken. Old patterns fall away. Awareness expands in ways logic cannot track. And in that raw openness, when you're no longer held together by old narratives, the field becomes accessible. Not because suffering is required, but because disruption clears the static. Trigger 4. You reached a new developmental stage. There are stages of consciousness that have nothing to do with age, yet often align with certain periods of life, moments where you shed an entire version of yourself, moments where you step out of one timeline and into another, moments where you stop asking, "Who should I be?" and start asking, "Who am I really?" These transitions, whether they happen at 18, 35, 47, or 60, naturally thin the boundary between individual mind and collective mind. And in those windows, quantum memory becomes easier to access. You don't force this part, you grow into it. Trigger 5. Ancestral or soul-level activation. Some people carry latent sensitivity, a kind of inherited openness to the field that doesn't activate until certain inner conditions align. Maybe someone in your lineage had similar access. Maybe your soul has touched this field in other lifetimes or other states of awareness. Maybe this capacity is part of the blueprint you came in with. It doesn't make you chosen. It just means you have a predisposition that activates when the moment is right. And for you, that moment is now. Trigger 6. The collective field shift made access easier. We're living in an unusual period of human history. Old paradigms are dissolving. Old identities are collapsing. Old structures are cracking open. People across the world are questioning reality, questioning themselves, questioning everything they were taught. This global shift is raising the frequency of the collective field. And when the collective rises, individuals rise with it. In past generations, accessing quantum memory was rare. Now, it's becoming part of our evolutionary arc. You're not the only one waking up, but your awakening is uniquely yours. And here's the truth that ties all of this together. Quantum memory didn't arrive early because you weren't ready for it early. If it had come too soon, your ego would have blocked it. Your nervous system would have rejected it. Your old identity would have dismissed it as imagination. But right now, right here, your consciousness is aligned enough, open enough, and stable enough to receive the field without collapsing under it. Everything in your story, every detour, every heartbreak, every shift, every unraveling led to this exact moment. Not as accident, as timing. And now that the door is open, the next question is, how do you stabilize this access so it doesn't stay sporadic or overwhelming, but becomes a conscious, reliable part of your awareness? That's what the next part is about. I haven't told this story in detail before, mostly because for a long time I didn't know how to talk about it without sounding unhinged. But you're here now, and you're understanding things most people aren't ready to understand. So I'll tell you exactly what happened, because my experience might help you make sense of your own. It started in a moment so ordinary, so painfully mundane, that I still laugh when I think about it. I wasn't meditating on a mountain. I wasn't deep in a spiritual retreat. I wasn't chanting mantras or calling on the universe. I was sitting alone in my car, parked outside a grocery store, engine off, phone dead, just me. And this strange, heavy silence that felt like the world had paused around me. Nothing dramatic happened. No light, no voice, no cosmic download, just silence. A silence that didn't feel empty. It felt full, like something was waiting for me to notice it. And then it happened. A thought rose in my mind. Not even a thought, really. More like a fully formed understanding. Clear, precise, complete. It was about a topic I'd never studied. Something obscure. Something I had zero reason to know. But I did know it. Perfectly. Effortlessly. As if someone had handed me a book I'd already read 1,000 times. At first I brushed it off. We all have random thoughts. Brains are weird, no big deal. But then the details kept coming. Not like imagination, not like creativity, not like guessing, like remembering. Paragraphs of insight, connections I'd never seen before, historical references I didn't even realize existed. It didn't feel supernatural, it felt natural. Too natural, like rediscovering a muscle I didn't know I had. I sat there gripping the steering wheel thinking, this isn't mine. I didn't learn this, so why does it feel like I've always known it? The mind does funny things when it meets something it cannot explain. My first instinct was to panic, to shut it down, to go back to normal. But the knowing didn't stop. It unfolded, layer after layer, each one revealing more depth than the last. And here's the strange part. None of it felt foreign. It felt like home. I didn't trust it at first. I spent days trying to debunk myself. I searched for where I might have read it. I tried to figure out if I'd overheard it somewhere. I asked myself if maybe I made it all up, but every time I checked, the information was accurate. Down to little details I couldn't possibly have learned by accident. This wasn't imagination, this wasn't coincidence. This was something else. And it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, it began happening everywhere. While talking to a friend, I'd explain something I didn't consciously understand until the words left my mouth. While reading an article, I'd predict entire paragraphs before my eyes reached them. While walking alone, concepts would drop into my awareness like puzzle pieces clicking into place, revealing a picture I didn't know I'd been assembling. It was overwhelming. Beautiful, confusing, liberating, terrifying all at once. And the question kept echoing in my mind. How do I know what I know? The breakthrough didn't come from thinking. It came one night when I finally stopped trying to analyze everything. I sat in my room, lights dim, no distractions, just breathing, slow, steady, uncluttered. And in that stillness, I felt it, not as a thought, not as an idea, as a presence, like I was standing at the edge of a vast ocean, one that had always been there, but I had never noticed. And the realization landed with a clarity that shook me. This isn't new information. This is memory, just not memory stored in my brain. It wasn't mine, but it wasn't not mine either. It was something deeper, a shared reservoir of understanding, a collective archive consciousness could drink from when it reached the capacity to perceive it. And in that moment, something inside me let go. The fear, the doubt, the need to explain everything, I stopped resisting, and the field opened wider. But here's the part people don't talk about. When quantum memory stabilizes, life doesn't get easier. It gets truer. You start seeing things you can't unsee, knowing things you can't unknow, feeling truths before reality has time to confirm them. Your relationships shift, your desires shift, your sense of self shifts. It's like the world flips inside out, and suddenly you're navigating it from a completely different layer. And yet, through all the upheaval, the confusion, the reorientation, something remarkable happens. You begin to trust your awareness, not your thoughts, not your logic, your awareness. You stop asking, is this real? And start asking, what is this trying to show me? And life becomes less about learning and more about remembering. I'm telling you this because your story is unfolding the same way. Maybe not in a parked car, maybe not in one sudden moment, but the pattern is there. You're starting to remember what you never learned. You're starting to access a layer of yourself you didn't know existed. You're starting to feel the field move through you, not as information but as recognition. And the next step in your journey is not about forcing the access, but about stabilizing it, strengthening it, finding the rhythm of it, learning to live with it without being overwhelmed. Because when you move from accidental access to conscious access, everything changes. That's what we'll explore next. By now you've probably realized something. Quantum memory isn't a moment, it's a capacity. And like any capacity, it can feel fragile at first, unpredictable, inconsistent. Some days it opens clearly, and other days it feels like it disappears behind fog. That doesn't mean it's gone. It means your consciousness is still learning how to hold it. So let me show you what actually stabilizes quantum memory and what quietly blocks it without you noticing. Because once you understand these patterns, the access stops being an accident and becomes something you can navigate deliberately. 1. Stillness isn't optional, it's the doorway. People assume they need to try to access the field, to think harder, to concentrate intensely, to summon something mystical. But quantum memory doesn't appear when you're trying. It appears when you're open. The field is subtle, your brain is loud, and until the loudness softens, you can't hear the signal behind it. Stillness isn't about sitting cross-legged like a monk. It's about easing the inner noise enough for the deeper layer of your awareness to surface. Even 1 minute of slowing down, dropping your shoulders, quieting your breath, letting your mind unclench, creates more access than an hour of trying. When the mind gets quiet, the field gets loud. 2. Emotional neutrality clears the static. Quantum memory gets distorted easily, not by outside forces, but by your own emotional turbulence. Fear tightens your awareness. Anxiety scatters it. Attachment bends it. Desire colors it. When you're overwhelmed, you're not aligned with the field. You're aligned with your survival system. But emotional neutrality doesn't mean suppressing how you feel. It means allowing emotion without being consumed by it. A neutral emotional state is like clean water. The signal stays pure. A chaotic emotional state is like mud. The signal gets clouded. When you feel too much, pause, breathe, let the wave pass. The clearer you feel inside, the clearer the field feels to you. 3. Doubt is louder than you think. Most people think doubt is an intellectual issue. It's not. It's an energetic interference. When you question every insight, every moment of knowing, every intuitive flash, you're not being logical. You're creating static. The field doesn't shut off, your receptivity does. And ironically, doubt has nothing to do with truth. It's just a reflex your brain uses to maintain control. Quantum memory requires a different posture. I don't have to believe it blindly, Bamu. but I'm willing to receive it. Trust doesn't replace discernment. It opens the channel so discernment can actually happen. 4. Stop trying to understand everything immediately. This one is hard for people, especially intelligent, analytical people. Quantum memory doesn't come with a user manual. It arrives first as knowing and only later becomes understood. You'll receive insights long before you can explain them. You'll feel truths long before you can articulate them. You'll understand things instantly but won't know how you understand them. That's not confusion. That's how the field communicates. If you demand an explanation before allowing the knowing, you shut the door. Let the understanding come in waves, layered, unfolding, revealed when you're ready, not when your ego demands clarity. 5. Trust what arises before you judge it. Every time you dismiss a piece of knowing, you weaken the channel. Not because the field withdraws from you, but because you step away from it. Quantum memory strengthens when you respond to it, when you acknowledge it, when you value it. You don't have to tattoo it on your belief system. Just let it be real long enough to see if it's true. Trust isn't commitment, it's permission. Give the field permission to speak before your mind decides what it should or shouldn't sound like. 6. Use what you receive. This part is rarely talked about, but it's one of the most powerful stabilizers. When you act on the insights you receive, when you apply the clarity, when you follow the knowing, you strengthen the pathway between you and the field. The more you use it, the more precise it becomes. The more you ignore it, the more muffled it feels. Quantum memory is like a muscle. It grows through participation. And when the field sees you're not just curious, but receptive and willing and aligned, the access deepens on its own. Here's the truth I wish someone had told me early on. You don't chase quantum memory. You prepare for it. You create the internal conditions that allow it to emerge. You remove the interference. You soften the noise. You stop fighting your own awareness. And then, the field meets you halfway. Not as a flash, not as a miracle, as a relationship, a dialogue, a resonance, a kind of inner gravity pulling you toward truths you've known forever, but are only now remembering. When you stabilize this access, something extraordinary happens. Your life stops being a guessing game. Your choices feel guided. Your perception sharpens. Your inner world becomes coherent. Your outer world becomes aligned. And remembering becomes your natural state. But there's one more piece you need to understand. Something most people are completely unprepared for. What happens when the access becomes permanent, and you can't go back to the version of yourself who didn't know? That's what we're about to explore. There comes a moment on this path, a quiet, almost invisible moment, where something inside you shifts so deeply that you can't return to who you were before. Not because you don't want to, but because the version of you who didn't know no longer exists. If you're listening to this right now, you're closer to that moment than you realize. So let's talk about what actually happens when quantum memory stops being an experience and becomes a baseline, a way of perceiving, a way of being, a way of existing in the world with an awareness that refuses to shrink back into the old frame. The first irreversible shift, your mind stops being the authority. You begin trusting your awareness more than your thoughts. Your inner knowing becomes louder than external opinions. Your intuition stops feeling like a guess and starts feeling like recognition, a remembering of something the mind hasn't caught up to yet. And once you taste that, once you see how accurate, how precise, how deeply aligned that inner knowing is, you can't pretend your old way of thinking was enough. Your mind doesn't disappear. It simply stops sitting on the throne. Awareness replaces it. The second irreversible shift. Your life reorganizes around truth. Not moral truth, not philosophical truth. I'm talking about energetic truth, the kind you feel in your bones. You stop tolerating situations that drain you. You stop staying where your soul has already left. You stop playing roles that no longer fit. Your boundaries sharpen, your desires clarify. Your relationships recalibrate. At first, this feels destabilizing. You wonder why everything is shifting so fast. But nothing is falling apart, it's falling into alignment. Because when you start remembering who you are beyond identity, your outer world must adjust to match your inner expansion. It's not loss, it's calibration. The third irreversible shift. You sense the field before reality shows its cards. You feel timelines before they unfold. You feel people's intentions before they speak. You sense endings before they happen, and beginnings before they reveal themselves. You no longer rely on evidence. You feel the direction of things. Most people call this intuition, but intuition is just the surface layer. This is something deeper, a non-local awareness, quantum sensitivity, a tuning into the field of possibilities before any one of them collapses into form. And once you start living this way, life becomes less about reacting and more about anticipating the flow beneath everything. You stop fighting reality. You begin moving with it. The fourth irreversible shift. You experience a kind of inner peace that doesn't make sense. Not because life becomes perfect, not because challenges disappear, but because you finally understand. You're not moving through reality. Reality is moving through you, and that realization dissolves fear in a way logic never could. You're no longer trying to control the world, you're learning to collaborate with it. You're no longer clinging to certainty, you're letting truth meet you in real time. And the more quantum memory stabilizes, the more grounded you become. Not detached, not floating away, but deeply present in a way you've never felt before. Present because you're no longer afraid of what you don't know. You've learned to trust the part of you that always knows. But here is the final shift, the one that truly marks the point of no return. You recognize that remembering is your natural state, not a gift, not a mystery, not an anomaly, but the baseline of who you are when nothing is interfering. You stop saying, I wish I knew, and begin saying, I'll know when I need to. You stop forcing answers, you allow them. You stop chasing clarity, you receive it. Your life becomes a conversation with a deeper intelligence, one that has always been here, waiting for you to become quiet enough and honest enough to hear it. And the moment this becomes your lived experience, there is no going back. Because once you've seen reality from the inside, you can't pretend the outside was ever the whole story. Once you've tasted yourself as consciousness, you can't return to believing you're only a mind. Once you've felt the field move through you, you can't convince yourself you were ever separate from it. So here's my invitation to you. Not a challenge, not a command. A simple recognition. If you've made it to this moment, you're already changing timelines. Your memory is shifting, Your awareness is widening, your identity is dissolving into something truer, older, and infinitely more expansive. You don't need to force the transformation, you only need to stop resisting it. Take a breath, feel the quiet inside your chest, and let this truth settle. You're not learning anymore, you're remembering, and that remembering some will not stop. Welcome to the version of you that cannot unknow what it now knows. The unlocking has already begun.